Okay, so welcome to the 6th devblog/tutorial on Global Gambit, where we show you how to make a grand strategy game. On this episode, we are going to look at setting up a player. Okay, first up, you may notice in the last video that these errors popped up in the output box. Basically, I was fiddling with the button outside of the actual content I gave you, and I just couldn't get rid of it. So, best practice, always have a backup. So if you do get something like that, you can always go back to the last working version. So that is now my backup folder, so I don't lose anything at this stage. Right, anyway, let's have a look at where we got to at the end of the last video. So we got a UI, we got all our nodes connected to it, all our labels connected to a container, and in that container it then connects to a canvas. As you can see, our camera control code is exactly the same as where we did it several videos ago. And then in our main, we've got all of our code that enables everything at the start. Basically the real skeleton of our code. Then we have our nation manager, which sets up all our countries. Then we have our region information panel, which basically shows the player what content is part of their nation. And then we've got our regions.json, which has all the information and resources for each region in particular. If you load it, okay, so you can move the camera around, you can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can click on a region, it will give you a little information panel. The panel you can drag around. You can see it doesn't crash when we click on non-owned regions. You can see I've even set up the United States as a nation now you can play as. So our goals for today, we're going to create a player. Then as part of the UI, we're going to create a top bar that shows the total resources for that player. We're then going to need to make a timer for slow, normal and fast, and some buttons to manipulate that time. And then because this was mentioned in the last video, we're going to even allow our region information panel to fade in and fade out. Okay, so first off, let's make the player. In the main, what we're going to do is we are going to add a couple of variables that's going to specify what the name of the player is. So at the moment we set it to player land. And then in our ready, we are then going to set if the player nation equals null, or otherwise we're going to set what the player is. So essentially an if statement and a couple of variables is all we need. So now that our player exists, let's make a top bar that shows what resources the player has. So in our UI, we're going to add another child node, and it's going to be a panel. And we're going to rename this panel to top bar. Okay, so in the inspector window for the top bar, we're going to go to layout and set the anchors to the top left, so it will show up there. Now inside of our top bar, we're going to have a container to keep everything together, then several labels and a control node. And these are the names I will be using. Okay, so like the region information panel, we're going to right click our top bar and we are going to attach a script, and I'm going to call this top bar. And pretty much like before, we've attached a script, and now we're going to move our topbar.gd into our scripts folder. So now we have a new scripting window. I can now say in topbar.gd, and the code for this is not too difficult. It's pretty much what we did in region information panel. We're going to have some variables that enable the labels, and then we're going to say what's going to be inside those labels. Now, because the nation data is going to change depending on how many regions you own, we're going to need to add it all up. So in Nation Manager, what we're going to start off with is adding a variable called region data, and we're going to use this as a dictionary that collects all the regions. And then we're going to need a for loop that's going to cycle through all the regions that the person owns. And then it's going to look at the population, oil and GDP. Then in the main, we're going to have another variable that's going to enable our top bar. Okay, and then in our ready, what we're going to do is we're going to make a quick lookup table. So first of all, we're going to initialize region data as an empty dictionary. Then we're going to make a for loop which iterates over each hex color to color region. And then finally, we're going to get the dictionary info of that region. So variable region info equals color. And then at the end of this, we're then going to refer to this function called update player resources. And we will need to put that somewhere near the bottom of our main. So basically, if the player owns it, the top bar is then going to update with the totals that were done in the Nation Manager. And because we have this function capture region, which we're not using at the moment, but we will need it eventually, we're also going to refer to update player resources there. So if you capture a region, the resources will still update. Okay, so let's test this out. So currently our nation's player land, if we run it, I would expect that to error because there is no nation in the Nation Manager that says player land, but let's test it anyway. So you can see the debugger has come up with some errors. And once again, it's coming up with that error for player land. Perfect, exactly what I was expecting. So let's go to Nation Manager and copy one of these names. So France is right at the top, so let's copy that. And then in our main, we'll replace player land with France. So now if we run it, our top bar at the top is now saying the player France, the population of all the regions added up, the oil, and the GDP. Now, to prove that this is not just a fluke, what we're going to do now is we're going to do this for a couple more nations. So let's copy the United Kingdom player, go back into main, and then change France to United Kingdom. Okay, so our population is now showing. The oil's gone down. Okay, good. And then last one, we don't need to go into Nation Manager for this because it's just USA. Okay, notice that the oil is considerably higher, and that's because with Anchorage, which, okay, it's blocking some of the top bar there, but you can see that Anchorage is 500 oil, and USA's basically got 500 oil. Okay, so let's make the top bar a little bit more readable. First of all, in the top bar inspector, we're going to set the anchors to full rect, and we're going to set the Y value to 30 pixels so it doesn't take up all the entire screen. And then we're going to add a color rect underneath top bar, but just above the container, so we can set the color for that container. And in the inspector panel for the color rect, we're going to set the color to be black. And once again, we're going to set the anchors to full rect, so we'll cover basically the entire bar. Okay, let's test it out and see what it looks like. Okay, so we've got the bar at the top. It's now just fully black, so now we can properly read it, and we can scroll around the map, and it hasn't affected anything else. Okay, so now when I click on Anchorage, we can actually see the oil without it being blocked off by the highlight. Okay, so back to our goals. So we created a player, we created a top bar that shows total resources for the player. Next up, we're going to try and create a timer so those resources can go up. So I'm thinking the game will have years. A slow turn will basically be 1 year every 15 minutes. A normal turn will be 1 year every 10 minutes. And a fast turn will be 1 year every 5 minutes. Okay, so I hope you like coding. So in the main, right at the top, we're going to need to declare some variables. Right, first of all, accumulated time in tick interval. Basically, accumulated time is the stopwatch for ticking. Then tick interval is how long the stopwatch has to reach before triggering a tick. Then we need to set our game day, which I'm setting to 1, our game month set to 1, our game year set to 1, and then our game speed. You'll notice right at the bottom I've also got a boolean for is pause set to false. Okay, so right in our ready, we have now got another lookup table, and what this is doing is it's creating a new key in the region dictionary called population float, and converts the integer population into a float so daily growth can be calculated precisely. Okay, the next function is going to be set game speed. We won't need it at this point, but we will need it later in the video. And what it's doing is it's associating certain words with their speed. So fast will be 300, normal will be 600, slow will be 900, and pause will be set to a boolean, which is true. Next up, we're going to have a function called onGamerTimeout. and this is basically the heart of the timing code. So it's going to check for pause and stops if paused. It's going to increment game time in seconds. It's going to convert elapsed time in game, year, month, day, and finally it's going to update population across all regions. And the last function we're putting in our main is this increase population per day. And what it does is it applies a daily population growth to all regions using a float for accuracy. Our variable yearly growth rate, which is currently set to about 1%. Then what it does is it updates the top bar with the player's nation's new totals, and then updates the region info panel if it's currently visible. Okay, and now we're going to go into our function physics process, and we're going to add these 4 lines of code here. And what it does is it counts up the elapsed time, and then once enough time has passed, it's going to update the game state. And then after that, it's then going to reset the counter and repeat. Okay, so in region info panel, you may have noticed in the main, I've referred to a function called update population. So this is that function. And what is happening is that we're inputting a new population integer. And basically the effect is it updates only the population line in the extra info label, keeping the other stats intact. Okay, last thing we need to do. In the Nation Manager, what we're going to do is we are going to create a new function called get total resources. And what it is doing is it's going to loop through all the regions, checks which ones are owned by the given nation, and then adds up the population, oil and GDP. It then finally returns them as a single dictionary. Okay, so for testing purposes, we're going to set the yearly growth rate to 5.0, which is the equivalent of like 500%. And we're just going to see if the top bar and the region panels update. Okay, you can see the top panel's already updating, and if you go into the individual regions, you can see that they are also multiplying by a lot. So, all working. Okay, so let's go back to our goals. So, we have now created a timer, and we do have those speeds in place, but we'll need some buttons to really see it properly. But basically, slow, normal, and fast are all in place. So next job is that we're going to create a series of buttons to manipulate time. So to play the time normally, to play the time slowly, to play the time fast, and probably a good idea to have a pause as well. Okay, so to make those buttons, you will need an image editor of your choice. I'm going to use Photoshop, and then I'm just going to draw essentially a rounded rectangle. So you can see how I've already made the button, but this is basically how I made it. So after I draw my shape, right click and go to blending options. I then use the gradient overlay to give it that kind of metallic sheen, and then went to stroke to add a border around my shape. And essentially that's all I'm doing. With the triangle, to get that outer glow, after I draw my triangle, I just right click the shape itself, went to blending options again, and then just ticked outer glow, keeping it nice and simple. And then once you are happy with your images, you are going to have to save them as a PNG. So file, save as, set to PNG, and you can see I've done that with all my other buttons so far. And I've got another folder called timeline buttons now inside of pictures as well to keep things nice and organized. So in Godot, you can now see that I've got pictures, buttons, and timeline buttons. I have a feeling I'm going to need other buttons in the future, so trying to keep it properly organized. Okay, so now the buttons are made. In the UI, we're going to basically add a control node to it now. And we are going to name this control node Game Speed Panel. Now we are going to need some things in this control node, so we're going to add some more child nodes. Basically, we're going to need a container to keep everything together. And then inside of our container, we're then going to need some texture buttons. So we need at least 4 texture buttons because we have 4 buttons. So you're just watching me just right click in the container and just go into child nodes and then just adding 4 buttons. Okay, next up, you're going to rename those buttons to something appropriate. So that's what I've called all of my buttons. basically slow button, normal button, fast button, pause button, nothing outlandish, just easy enough to know what they do. Okay, next up we are going to apply the texture to our texture buttons. So to do that, we click each button, then we go to the inspector, and then under texture button, we're going to go to textures, and then we're just going to set normal and then load where our pictures are kept. So you can see kind of the structure layout of how I've got my folders now for each button. Okay, with all the textures done, we're going to now need to attach it to some code. So in GameSpeed panel, we're going to attach a script, and we're going to call this scripting file GameSpeed panel. And then here in the editor, I'm just going to adjust their positions. So I've kind of got GameSpeed panel a little bit lower than the main being the key one. Okay, so for the code, we're going to have two functions. Our ready, which basically connects our button to the change speed function and the word it's connected to. That function we made quite a while ago. And then we've got another function here where we can have the text saying the game speed set to. Okay, next up, we're going to group our buttons. So clicking on the main node, top right inside, we're going to go to groups, and then we're just going to call it, make a new group called speed buttons. Now we're going to attach all our buttons to that. So we click each button, go over to the top right and make sure we've got node, and just tick off speed buttons. So they're all linked to the speed buttons scene group. Okay, in the main, what we're going to need to do is we're going to create 4 more functions. So function on fast button, we're going to then set game speed equals fast. Function on normal buttons, we're going to set game speed normal. Function on slow button pressed, we're going to set the game speed to slow. And then on the pause button, set game speed to pause. Okay, with that done, we are now going to click each button in turn. We're going to go to the node, we're going to click on signals, and it's going to bring us this connect to signal to a method window. And what we're going to do is, for the slow button, we're going to, on the receiver method, put set underscore game underscore speed. And then for the extra call argument, we're going to set it to string, and then what word we want to pop up. Now it has to be in speech marks, so I'm going to do speech marks, slow speech marks. And if you do miss one like I just did there, make sure you go back and add the speech marks. So here we go. For normal button, what we're going to do is set underscore game underscore speed. And then once again, in the add extra call argument, we're going to add it. And then for this one, once again, it should be 2 speech marks. Yep, cool. And then just click connect, and you just repeat the same process. If you do miss one, you can just go back into signals, which I'll need to do after I've finished editing this video. Okay, so let's test what we have. Okay, so we got our buttons on the screen. They're a little bit big. Okay, but before we panic, let's see if they actually do what I'm clicking. So if I click pause, oh, you notice that the populations have now stopped. So they are clearly working. So we can definitely check that we can pause time. let's add a bonus objective that we need to shrink the buttons to fit the screen. Okay, so I did have a couple of methods of doing this. I was thinking about forcing the container to do it. However, it turns out it's just quicker if I just change the original image to about 50 by 50 pixels. So what you're about to see me do is go into Photoshop, copy the image into a more of a squared image, and then go into image and then just resize it to 50 by 50, which I should have done to begin with. To make your lives easier, just make your images 50 by 50 to avoid having to redo your images. So at that point, I then just rename the picture to the picture resized. I think I've used multiple different names when I was doing this. Then for your texture buttons, just go through, clear the texture, and then put in the new texture for it. So you can see me just going through each texture button now and reassigning the textures. Okay, so hopefully with those images done and making sure that our GameSpeed panel is set to the bottom right, and then our container can just be set anchor-wise custom. Okay, let's test it. Okay, our buttons are in the bottom right hand corner. You can see that our populations are still getting quite big. If I click the pause button, it stops. If I click the play button, it carries on. So it's going to be a little bit difficult to test if the other two are working because the numbers are going quite high. So I'll probably in the next video show you how to put like the month and the day next to it to properly check if those two buttons are working. However, for the moment, I'll assume they're working. So playtime normally is definitely done. We're going to assume those two bits are actually done as well. And we shrunk the buttons to fit the screen. So this comes to our last objective, which is our comment that was put in the last video. You can make the panel fade in and out to make it look cooler when you click on a region. That is actually really easy to do, so I've stuck it right at the end. So in our region info panel, this is what happens when we hide a panel. It's just set to visible to false. To make it fade, we're going to need modulate, which we had to get rid of a few videos ago. But if we put a tween property and a modulate in there, and then the 0.3 is how long that will basically fade for, that will basically be all we need to hide our panel. And you know what, if we're doing this for hiding the panel, I'm going to add one last bonus objective. We are going to have it now so it fades in as well, so it looks properly professional. So we've already done all the code for this. We'll just go to the function that says show panel, and right where it says visible equals true, we're pretty much just going to use the same code we used for the hide panel. So there we go. So we're now going to have the modulate in there, and we're going to tween it so it looks like it's fading in, and 0.3 is once again how long it takes to fade in. So let's just put a tick right by those. And to finish off, let's see how it looks all together. So one final test for today. Okay, so all working. Right, so this video is getting quite long as it is. Wasn't planning on it being my longest video to date, but there we are. Like and subscribe if you think the video is useful. Leave a comment if you've got any questions. But other than that, I'll see you next time.